Everyone expected Canada to come crawling back to Washington after Trump terminated trade talks. What happened instead just shocked the world. Prime Minister Mark Carney stepped off a plane in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and received something extraordinary. A red carpet welcome, military honors, flashing cameras, Asian leaders treating him like a major world power. And here's the part that changes everything. President Trump was at the exact same ASEAN summit. No meeting scheduled between them. Zero. Canada just showed the world it doesn't need America's approval anymore. The Canada-Asia pivot that's happening right now during Carney's ASEAN summit trip isn't just diplomatic theater. It's a complete restructuring of Canada's economic future. And the timing is too perfect to be coincidence. While Trump attends the same summit, Carney is building partnerships with Southeast Asian nations that collectively represent over $3 trillion in GDP and 650 million people. This Canada-Asia pivot is sending one clear message. We're done being America's dependent northern neighbor. Here's what makes this Canada-Asia pivot so significant. When Carney arrived in Malaysia, he received a military honor guard and ceremonial welcome usually reserved for major regional powers. Southeast Asian countries don't hold military ceremonies for every Western leader who visits. They do it for countries they see as important partners. The coverage in Asian media portrayed Canada not as a U.S. satellite state, but as a serious independent actor. That's the perception Carney is deliberately building through this Canada-Asia pivot. But the substance behind the ceremony is even bigger. Before leaving for Asia, Carney announced Canada's goal to double exports to markets outside the United States within the next decade. Double them. Currently, 75% of Canadian exports flow to American markets. That's the dangerous dependence Carney is trying to break through this Canada-Asia pivot. He's not talking about incremental adjustment. He's talking about fundamental restructuring of Canada's entire economic orientation. The Canada-Asia pivot makes strategic sense because ASEAN nations are actively seeking diverse international partnerships. They're navigating great power competition between the U.S. and China, and they don't want to choose sides. They want multiple options. Canada offers exactly that. A G7 economy with advanced technology, stable institutions, abundant resources, and crucially, no imperial ambitions or coercive demands. In statements to media before the summit, Carney said something that would have been unthinkable from a Canadian Prime Minister years ago. We're not the United States. That's now the foundation of Canada's diplomatic messaging through this Canada-Asia pivot. The economic logic is straightforward. Asia now accounts for over half the world's merchandise and services trade. That percentage keeps growing. Meanwhile, North American trade represents a declining share of global commerce and comes with massive political risk. Agreements canceled via social media posts, tariffs imposed without warning, negotiations terminated over television commercials. Carney's response to Trump's unpredictability is this Canada-Asia pivot. If Washington won't be reliable, we'll find partners who will. After Malaysia, the Canada-Asia pivot continues to Singapore, one of Asia's wealthiest economies with strength in financial services, technology, and logistics. Then Carney heads to South Korea, a G20 advanced economy with world-leading capabilities in electronics, automotive, and artificial intelligence. Each stop represents a building block in what Canadian officials are calling a comprehensive Asia strategy that extends beyond trade to include educational exchanges, technology partnerships, and cultural connections. The contrast between Carney's approach and Trump's is stark. Trump views international relations as zero-sum competitions where dominance matters most. The Canada-Asia pivot emphasizes mutual benefit, long-term relationship building, and respect. Carney isn't demanding Asian nations choose between Canada and other partners. He's offering Canada as an additional option. This resonates powerfully across Asia, where nations appreciate partners who treat them as equals. What does this Canada-Asia pivot mean for ordinary Canadians? If it succeeds over the next 5 to 10 years, it could transform Canada's economic future. The next generation building careers, selling to Asian, European, African markets instead of primarily Americans. Canadian companies viewing themselves as genuinely global. Canada's role in global governance based on earned respect rather than proximity to American power. This Canada-Asia pivot represents Canada's most significant geopolitical repositioning in generations. And it's happening in real time. Subscribe to follow every development as Carney visits Singapore and South Korea. Drop a comment. Can Canada actually reduce American economic dependence, or is geographic proximity too strong?